A few months before my wife Jess and I got married, we had the strangest and most terrifying experience of our lives so far. In fact, I'm willing to bet it's stranger than pretty much everything that's happened to anybody else. To set the scene, we were walking through a forest on a Saturday, which is something Jess and I like to do. We brought a picnic lunch and Jess brought one of her volleyballs in case there was a court we could play on somewhere. The forest was peaceful that day, birds chirping, sunlight filtering through the trees, and a light breeze rustling the leaves. We'd been hiking for about an hour when Jess stopped dead in her tracks. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I strained my ears, but all I caught was the usual forest sounds. "Hear what?" I asked. She frowned, tilting her head. It sounded like voices, faint, like they were coming from far away, maybe underground. I brushed it off as her imagination running wild. Jess always did have a knack for hearing things I couldn't. But as we kept walking, I started to hear it too, soft, overlapping whispers that seemed to weave through the wind, too quiet to make out but too real to ignore. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to follow the sound. The whispers grew louder as we veered off the trail, leading us to a small clearing we'd never seen before. In the center stood something bizarre, a metallic structure, half buried in the earth, its surface etched with strange, jagged symbols that didn't look like anything human. And surrounding it, arranged in a perfect circle, were dozens of baguettes. Yes, baguettes, like the kind you'd see in a bakery, golden brown and crusty. I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of prank or weird art piece left by a local eccentric. "What is this?" I said to Jess, but she didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the bread. That's when it happened. The baguettes twitched. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then they moved again, small, jerky motions, like something alive was stirring inside them. Before we could react, they rose into the air, floating silently around us in a slow, deliberate circle. My heart slammed against my chest. Jess grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Then the whisper stopped, replaced by a voice, no voices, speaking directly into our heads. "Help us. We are stranded. Need fuel. Reactor subnuclear." I stumbled back, my mind racing. "Are you hearing this too?" I asked Jess, my voice shaking. She nodded, her face pale. "What do we do?" she whispered. I didn't know, but standing there, surrounded by floating bread that was somehow talking to us, I felt like we didn't have a choice. Swallowing my fear, I focused my thoughts and replied silently, "Who are you? What do you need?" The response came instantly, a chorus of voices echoing in my skull. "We are from a dimension like your France, where we are the dominant race. Our ship crashed here when our reactor went subnuclear, below operational power. We need a crystal to restart it, one found in a cave nearby. Help us retrieve it, or the portal we came through will destabilize, and the demons possessing us will flood your world." Demons? Possessed baguettes? It sounded insane, but the weight of their words, and the unnatural sight in front of us, made it impossible to dismiss. Jess and I locked eyes, a silent agreement passing between us. "We have to help," she said firmly. "If they're telling the truth, we can't let demons loose here." A map flashed into my mind, showing the cave's location just a mile away, followed by a warning. "Beware, the cave is guarded by spirits of those who sought the portal. They will try to stop you." We set off, the forest growing darker and quieter with every step. The air turned cold and the whispers returned, not the baguettes this time, but something else, something angry. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, and I could have sworn I saw humanoid shapes darting between the trees, too fast to track. By the time we reached the cave, a jagged opening in a hillside glowing faintly from within, my nerves were shot. Jess squeezed my hand. "We can do this," she said, though her voice wavered. Inside, the cave was a nightmare. The walls glistened with moisture, stalactites hung like fangs, and the air smelled of decay. The deeper we went, the stronger the glow became, guiding us to a chamber where a crystal sat on a pedestal, pulsing with a sickly green light. But as we stepped closer, the temperature plummeted and the whispers turned into snarls. "Turn back," voices hissed, "or join us in torment." Ghostly figures materialized around us, pale, translucent, their faces twisted in agony and rage. They rushed us, their cold hands brushing my skin, sending jolts of terror through me. Jess screamed as one grabbed her arm, but I shouted, "We're not here to steal, we're fixing the portal." The spirits froze, their hollow eyes narrowing. One drifted forward, its voice grating like stone on stone. "Prove it. Show the mark of the travelers." I remember the symbols on the ship and, with a trembling hand, scratched one into the dirt. The spirit studied it, then faded away, leaving the crystal unguarded. We snatched it and bolted, the cave's oppressive weight lifting as we emerged into the forest. Back at the clearing, the baguettes glowed faintly, their voices urgent. Quickly, place the crystal in the reactor. I found a slot on the ship's hull, slid the crystal in, and stepped back as the structure hummed to life. Lights blinked on, a deep rumble shook the ground, and the baguettes floated toward an opening that appeared in the ship's side. But as the last one entered, it paused, its voice sharp in my mind. Thank you, but the demons may still cross, destroy the crystal once we're gone. Before I could ask more, the ship lifted off, vanishing in a blinding flash. The crystal fell to the ground, its glow extinguished. Without hesitation, I grabbed a rock and smashed it to pieces. A shockwave pulsed through the forest, silencing the whispers for good. The birds returned, the sun broke through the clouds, and everything felt normal again. Jess and I never told anyone about that day. Who'd believe us anyway? But sometimes, when we walk that forest, I catch faint echoes on the wind, reminders of the strangest, most terrifying experience we've ever had. And I wonder if we really closed that portal, or if something's still out there, waiting. I'm a physics major, and partly due to how demanding the coursework was, I decided to enroll in a foreign exchange program. I was going to be studying nuclear physics in France for one semester, and was really looking forward to it. However, my time there ended up playing out radically different than how I'd envisioned it. The program was based in a small university town near Bordeaux, surrounded by rolling vineyards and quaint villages. I arrived in late summer, buzzing with excitement to dive into my studies and explore a country I'd only read about. The first month flew by, lectures on quantum mechanics, late-night study sessions with espresso, and weekend trips to local markets. But the real thrill came when our professor announced a field trip to a cutting-edge nuclear reactor just outside the city. For a nerd like me, it was the chance of a lifetime. The morning of the tour, I could barely sit still on the bus. The facility loomed ahead, a sleek, modern complex with towering smokestacks and a faint hum that vibrated through the ground. Our guide, Madame Leclerc, greeted us with a tight smile and a clipboard full of waivers. She was a no-nonsense physicist with a thick accent, and she led us through a maze of corridors, explaining the reactor's role in experimental energy research. I hung on her every word, scribbling notes about fission rates and coolant systems. We finally reached the observation deck, a glass-walled room overlooking the reactor core. The blue glow of the Cherenkov radiation bathed everything in an eerie light, and I pressed my face to the window, mesmerized. That's when I noticed Julian, a fellow student, pulling a baguette out of his backpack. He'd bought it from a bakery that morning and apparently couldn't wait for lunch. "Julian, put that away," Madame Leclerc snapped, but he just grinned, tearing off a piece. What happened next was so fast it barely registered. Julian tripped over a loose cable, flailing as he tried to catch himself. The baguette flew from his hand, arced through the air, and slipped through a gap in the safety barrier, plunging straight into the reactor's coolant tank below. A collective gasp ripped through the group. Madame Leclerc's clipboard clattered to the floor as she lunged for the emergency intercom. "Contamination breach," she shouted, her voice cracking. Alarms erupted, a piercing wail that drilled into my skull. The reactor's hum deepened into a guttural growl, and the monitors lining the walls flickered with erratic readings. "Power levels dropping, subnuclear threshold breached," one of the technicians yelled out. Subnuclear? I never encountered that term in any textbook. The coolant tank bubbled violently, and through the chaos I saw the baguette bobbing in the water, its golden crust stark against the glowing blue. Then the lights dimmed, and a strange static filled the air, like a radio stuck between stations. The baguette twitched. At first, I thought it was just the currents in the tank, but then it moved, jerking upward with a force that defied physics. Water splashed against the glass as it broke the surface, hovering a foot above the tank. Its crust began to crack, oozing a thick black vapor that coiled like smoke. The temperature in the room plummeted, and my breath fogged in front of me. "Get back," Madame Leclerc screamed, but no one could move. We were transfixed as the baguette pulsed with a faint violet light. The black vapor twisted into shapes, claws, eyes, a gaping maw, before sinking back into the bread. A low, guttural whisper slithered through the room, not from any speaker, but from everywhere at once. "The veil weakens. We rise." Madame Leclerc grabbed a walkie-talkie, her hands trembling. "The subnuclear state. It's opened a rift. We need to shut it down." A rift? My mind raced, piercing together scraps of fringe theories about dimensional instability. Could the reactor's collapse below critical mass have torn through space-time itself? Before anyone could react, the baguette spun violently, shedding crumbs that ignited into tiny violet sparks. The air crackled with energy, and the observation window rattled as if something massive was pressing against it. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the baguette shot upward. It smashed through the ceiling, leaving a jagged hole ringed with scorch marks, and vanished into the sky in a streak of purple light. A deafening silence followed, broken only by the distant wail of sirens. The evacuation was a blur, shouted orders, flashing lights, and a dozen conflicting explanations from the staff. Madame Leclerc stayed behind, muttering about containment protocols and multiversal anomalies. By the time we were herded onto the bus, the facility was swarming with hazmat teams and unmarked vans. No one spoke on the ride back. Julian sat pale and silent, staring at his empty hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that possessed baguette haunted me, its unnatural glow, the whispers that still echoed in my ears. I told myself it was over, that whatever had happened was contained. But around 3 a.m., I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping at my dorm window. I pulled back the curtain and my stomach dropped. There, floating outside in the moonlight, was the baguette. Its crust was charred and split, leaking that same black vapor. The violet light pulsed faintly, illuminating a pair of hollow, glowing eyes staring right at me. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and the whispers returned. "You saw us. You will serve." I stumbled back, heart hammering, and the window shattered inward. Glass sprayed across the floor, but when I looked again, the baguette was gone. The next day, I withdrew from the program and flew home, abandoning my notes, my research, everything. I haven't even touched physics since. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I smell freshly baked bread out of nowhere. And late at night, I hear that tapping, like something's trying to get in. I don't know what that baguette became, or where it went, but I know one thing. It's not done with me. I've done a bit of freelance work over the years and used to work pretty consistently as a graphic designer. I also made some comics, though they never really took off. Eventually, frustrated with my work seemingly going nowhere, I got the idea to make the comics as bizarre as possible, partly as a joke and partly to help ease my boredom. I'd spent years chasing the dream of breaking into the comic industry, but every pitch I sent out came back with a polite rejection, or worse, no response at all. My freelance gigs kept the lights on, but they were soul-crushing, mostly tweaking corporate logos or designing ads for products I didn't care about. I definitely needed something to reignite my passion, something so wild that it'd either make me laugh or finally get someone's attention. Late one night, hunched over my sketchbook in my cluttered home office, I had a ridiculous epiphany. What if I drew a comic about demon-possessed nuclear baguettes from another dimension? The idea hit me like a punchline to a joke I hadn't told yet. I pictured these crusty loaves, pulsing with an eerie green glow, tearing through a portal from some subnuclear hellscape, their doughy bodies writhing with malice. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever thought of, and I loved it. I grabbed my pencil and got to work. The baguettes in my sketches had jagged, toothy maws where their ends should have been, and their crusts split open to reveal veins of glowing energy. They terrorized a small town, levitating over streets, leaving trails of irradiated crumbs. I threw in some dark humor, lines like, "Your soul's toast," and "Time to rise and grind," because why not? If I was going full weird, I leaned into it. By 3 a.m., I had a rough draft of The Baguette Invasion, and for the first time in months, I felt alive. The next evening, I was adding shading to a panel when I heard a faint crunch from downstairs. I lived alone in a quiet suburban house, so any sound out of place set me on edge. I brushed it off as the house settling and kept working, but then it happened again, louder, like something heavy dragging across the hardwood. I put down my pen and crept to the kitchen. There, on the counter, sat a single baguette. Not a grocery bag in sight, no receipt, no nothing. I hadn't been shopping in days. I just stared at it, my stomach twisting. It looked normal, just a plain, slightly stale loaf. Shaking my head, I tossed it in the trash and went back upstairs, chalking it up to exhaustion playing tricks on me. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, baguettes started showing up everywhere. I'd find one balanced on my bathroom sink, another tucked behind my couch cushions, even one propped against my computer monitor like it was waiting for me. I couldn't explain how any of them got there. I lived miles from the nearest bakery, and I hadn't told anyone about my comic, not a soul. Then, things got stranger. I'd drawn a scene where a baguette burst through a car windshield, and the next morning, my neighbor complained about a weird loaf he'd found smashed against his truck's grill. It matched my sketch down to the jagged tear in its crust. One night, I was refining the comic's climax, where the baguette swarmed the town square, when the lights in my office flickered. A low hum filled the air, like a swarm of bees trapped in the walls. I froze as the baguette on my desk, the one I'd found there an hour ago, began to tremble. Its crust split open, revealing a sickly green glow that pulsed in time with the hum. I stumbled back, knocking over my chair as it rose into the air, hovering a foot off the desk. Its face turned toward me, and I swear I saw eyes, tiny, burning pinpoints, staring right through me. I bolted downstairs, heart hammering, and locked myself in the living room. The hum followed, growing louder, joined by a chorus of rustling and crunching. Through the crack under the door, I saw shadows moving, dozens of them, elongated and twisted. The baguettes were multiplying, spilling into my house like a tide. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but the screen flickered and died. Then the power cut out completely, plunging me into darkness. For hours, I sat there, listening as they scratched at the walls and thumped against the ceiling. At one point, I heard a voice, not out loud, but in my head, raspy and ancient. "You drew us. You woke us." It was then that I realized unequivocally that my comic wasn't just a joke. Somehow, I tapped into something real, something that had been waiting in the cracks of reality. These weren't just baguettes, they were entities, subnuclear horrors from a multiverse I'd accidentally invited in. Desperate, I snuck back to my office at dawn, the hum quieter now. The baguettes were still, scattered across the floor like discarded props. I found my sketchbook and tore out every page, shredding them into confetti. I thought that might undo it, break whatever connection I'd made. For a few hours, it seemed to work. The house was silent, the air normal again. I started to convince myself it was over. But that night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, a single, deliberate thump from the kitchen. My blood ran cold. I didn't want to look, but I had to know. I crept downstairs, flashlight trembling in my hand, and there it was, a fresh baguette on the counter, its crust already cracking, green light seeping out. Beside it lay a crumpled note I hadn't written, but nonetheless looked like it was inked in my own handwriting. "We're not done with you." I don't sleep much anymore. Every creak, every shadow makes me jump. I stopped drawing, thrown out my pencils, but it doesn't matter. They keep coming back, sometimes one, sometimes dozens, watching and waiting. I have no idea what they want, or how long I have before they decide I'm no longer useful. All I know is that my stupid little joke opened a door I can't close, and whatever's on the other side is hungry.